Hi, it's Alice Seba from Contentrix.com. It's no secret that internet users have an incredibly short attention span. They look at a page and decide if it's worth staying in a matter of seconds, often less. So if you want to grab and keep the attention of more of your readers, this video is going to show you how some quick editing tips can help you ensure that your content gets read. Now here we have an article. It's decently written. Doesn't really grab you. It's got a nice bold headline, but you know what's going to get your attention? What we're going to do here is edit this article and kind of look back and forth and see how the changes that we're making make it much more readable and easy to attract attention. Now the first thing we're going to do is open up the article, and we're using WordPress here. Whatever you use, whatever web editor, this applies. WordPress comes with an extra challenge, is that what you see in this box here depends on your theme, is not what you always see outside. So you always have to be looking at how it actually looks when it appears on your website. A lot of their web page editors don't have that limitation, so it's something to keep in mind. Anyways, the first place we'll start is the headline. And, how to overcome emotional eating. I mean, that's all well and good. And if we know we're emotional eaters, then maybe that will help us. But I think this article covers two things. It covers not only what is emotional eating, are you an emotional eater, and how do you get help? So let's try to change the article so it reflects more like that. Something like, are you an emotional eater? 3, this is a fairly long title, but that's okay. Steps to healing. It may or may not look good in the website, but we'll look at that in the preview when we're ready. So that also quantifies the number, makes it more concrete. It's got 3 important steps to healing. All right, so let's just move on, and we're going to talk about images. Remember that when we looked at this article, it was just text. So let's create emotional eating can be upsetting. Let's create an image of worry and stress, which is characteristic probably of someone who's concerned about this, followed by happiness and relief. The worry represents how they might be feeling right now, and then the other image is going to represent how they work through the steps. So I've got some images. And we've got some lady here. We're going to insert it into the post. We're also going to make sure there's white space around the images, because there's nothing worse than text that crams into it. In here, we'll make sure there's no border. We're going to add about 10 pixels of horizontal and vertical space. So there's our lady who represents a little bit of emotional eating. And we're going to add another picture where the solution. Sorry. See, this text doesn't have any good format, the really good formatting to find. Okay, here we go. There is help for emotional eaters. Okay, so we're going to put another picture right here. And there's a happy lady with an apple. Isn't she lovely? We'll put that on the right side. Let's be a little different. And we're also going to make sure that there is white space around that image, because we do not want the text crammed in there. All right. Okay, so if we go ahead and preview this article now, already you can see a difference. There's a question asked, it's getting attention. Where did our other picture go? Hang on 1 second. Here we go. We will refresh our pic. There she is. See our happy lady there. All right. Okay, so already we've started to make some great improvements here. One other thing to note also is that we use images of women, and because the target audience of this site is women, it makes perfect sense. You may want to vary doing that. The next thing we want to do is break up the paragraphs. We're going to engineer what I like to call engineering paragraphs, and we're going to forget about the grammar rules because we're going to do what makes sense. We're going to edit paragraphs around the images because you don't want a lot of long scrolling text, narrow text beside an image. It just makes it hard to read and uninviting. We're also going to edit some paragraphs for emphasis. So we're going to see if we're looking at this beside this page here. We see this is long and scrolling all around the page, and it's not going to look that great when we look at it on the web. So we're going to break this up a little bit, and we're going to say break it up about here. And yes, sometimes a paragraph will be one sentence, but when you look at it on the web, you're going to see that that one sentence looks quite long and makes it so much easier to read. All right. So we're going to break this up as well. We're going to go, everybody has good days and bad days. A nice place to start, something that someone's going to notice. Everyone has good days and bad days. And there we go. And I leave this on its own. A little bit of emphasis. Everyone has good days and bad days, but how we deal with the bad ones brings emotional eating into play. And then we bring it back to this person and say, you look for comfort for your pain. All right. And we ended a sentence with it's a vicious cycle, but I think that can stand out on its own. Someone who's scanning is going to notice that. Someone who's reading it is going to feel the power of just that sentence. Okay, so we're going to save our draft again. And we're going to go back to our article. And we refresh it. And we've broken it up a little bit easier to read. Shorter paragraphs. All right. So let's go back. And we're going to look at subheadings. Break it up even more. Do some bolding so people can see what we're reading. Okay, so our introduction, we're going to leave that. So we talked about the description. Right here. This is where we turn it on them and we're asking them, how do you know you're using food in this way? So let's put a subheadline of, are you an emotional eater? Okay, and also we want to move. There's another section where we talk about giving them help for emotional eating. So we're going to go down here. Okay, right up here. How to get help for emotional eating. There you are. And because we've added a subheadline, we should really have kind of a conclusion. This part abruptly ends here. So we want to say maybe if this sounds like you, it might be time to look at some solutions and help. Because, pardon me, we do want people to keep reading. Just adding a subheadline doesn't help with the flow. It helps with scanning and things like that, but we want it to flow. And we are actually going to, because we're going to break this up into steps, there's 3 steps, so we're going to make subheadlines for those. We're going to add a little bit extra to the beginning. It's not an easy road. But But if you follow these 3 steps, you will be closer to healing your physical, and emotional health. Okay, so and then we can go into the steps. And now here, see, this article wrote the first step. Secondly, it really doesn't bring the I in. So we're going to change that. We're going to do step 1, admitting there's an issue. And again, when we preview this is going to look very different on the screen. Admitting there's an issue. And I noticed this paragraph is kind of missing something, so it talks about the guilt and stuff, but let's say, but once you admit you have something to deal with, you will be prepared to move on and heal. That's the thing. We really want it to move us into the second point. Give them some positive thing to feel, and so they can move on to step 2. And step 2 is seek counseling. And we're going to bold that. And obviously we don't need this sentence then. That becomes a bit redundant. Okay. Oh, see, I keep missing it. Let's go to the third step. Step 3, get your family involved. Oops, I cannot type very well. There we go. Get your family involved. So we can just take out the thirdly since we already said third. All right. So let's save these changes and see what we've got. All right. So already starting to look better, right? It's drawing your eye in. You see the 3 steps. There's hope. There's a happy lady at the end. And I don't mean to make light of the situation. I'm just talking about the content and how we can really portray what we want just visually. All right, so let's go back again. And we're going to bold, italicize, and just for emphasis and scannability. I don't think that's actually a word, but I like that word. So here we go. And there's lots we could probably do with this. I'm just going to do a few things briefly so we can do. It's a vicious cycle. Let's underline vicious, or bold it, I should say, and italicize it. Answering yes to any of these questions, which means not just one of the questions. It doesn't matter if you answered them all yes, just one of them. You might have this issue. So just, you could go through and highlight different phrases and things like that just to bring some emphasis. You don't want to overdo it because it's a little too much. It could be too much, and then if everything's bold and everything's considered to be important, then that's a bit of a problem. Then it's hard to see what's not important, if you know what I mean. So then also what we're going to do is we're going to make sure this article focuses on the reader, the person we're talking to about. Now, with a sensitive subject like this, it might be tempting to remove the focus from the reader a little bit. After all, we don't want to accuse people of having a problem, but realize that the people who really need this article and who are going to act upon what you suggest that they do are the people who are going to relate to it. So talk directly to them. So this article does that fairly well. You look for comfort here. Now see, it goes, you look for comfort in your pain. People who turn to food. It's like, why are we're moving it away from the person. We're going to keep it focused on the you. You might turn to food. And here, this is going to be much more powerful if we change this. For food to find a coping mechanism that won't judge you, hurt you, or tell you no. That's much different than just saying that. So they may hide behind. We'll just change that to you may hide behind. All right. So we're going to move on to the next thing that we're going to edit. And we're going to go through, remove extra words and do some miscellaneous editing. Always go through your writing to limit any excessive words that you don't need, just to keep the sentence structure really simple. Most people are only going to stay for a second or two. So if you manage to get their attention, get to the point quickly. So what we're going to do, a lot of the editing we're doing is not to correct mistakes. It's perfectly acceptable the way it is. We're just going to try to remove words. For example here, your body gets its nutrients from foods, but sometimes we can go overboard. Why do we have to say can? Sometimes we go overboard. If the target audience is reading this, we do go overboard sometimes. And it can result, forget the can again, it results in gaining weight. It's kind of awkward. Why not just say weight gain? But spell it correctly. Weight gain. All right. This is kind of choppy here. The problem of emotional eating may end with the scale but begins in the mind. Stress takes its toll on your life. When your defenses are compromised, your health takes a hit, and so do your emotions. It's a little awkward here. When your defenses are compromised, your emotional and physical health takes a hit. Instead of the and so do, it's extra words. Emotional and physical health takes a hit. So almost the same, just a little shorter and a little more to the point. Emotional eaters use food to relieve stress. You may hide behind the food. We don't need the small point, but if you do all this editing, you're going to make it more succinct. And this is not uncommon now. I'm not sure why that's written in a sort of a double negative there. So this is common, or a death. We don't have to say a death, we can just say death. All right. How do you know if you're using food in this way? The first sign is obvious. You will gain weight. You gain weight if you eat too much. Let's be more direct. All right. Here, you eat, but you are not necessarily hungry at the time. How about you eat when you aren't really hungry? Much more simple. You aren't really hungry. Simple enough. Let's leave it at that. All right, so we're going to leave it at that. There's other things we can do. We can go through and change more things, make them more succinct. All of this is going to help. It's visual things. It's also information. It's making the information more succinct, making the writing better. All these things are going to help people to notice your content and read it through. So now we can just save it one more time and go and take a peek at how it looks. Some of the things aren't as noticeable as if you're not reading it, but we already have a much better article, something that someone's going to pay attention to. If it applies to them, they're going to be able to scan it or read it and say, oh my goodness, this is me. Maybe I need to get some help, which is exactly what we want out of our articles.